that I'm speaking to you from. I'm speaking from the Camaragal land of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. I'd like to note that this land has been, and always will be Aboriginal land, and that sovereignty was never ceded. Next slide, please. So just letting you know, if everyone could mute their microphones, that'd be great. So today, what we're going to go through is the How to Apply guide, and this can be found on our website, which is on the Funding and Support tab, which is just under the Help for Funding for Applicants. So if you want to go back and refer to it, it's just there. So today I'll provide you a bit of an overview of the Arts and Cultural Funding Program for 21-22, and give you an update on the key changes. Next slide, please. So you can find all of this on our website, and we also have quite a few other fact sheets there, so we would definitely recommend having a peruse through those. And then our contact details are available there too. Next slide, please. So for the Arts and Cultural Funding Program for 21-22, we have quite a few funding opportunities. So what's opened recently and is open until August is round 1 of the 21-22 ACFP. So our funding has 2 main rounds. As you can see there, they fall under individual, organisation and LGA. And these other include creative courier projects, project funding, organisation funding, as well as our creative leadership. So they are fellowships for professional development opportunities. We also have our small project grants. Next slide, please. And these are a year-round grant opportunity that you can apply for. So they are a grant that's you can apply for between $500 and $5,000. And it can be for the development or presentation or both of your project, and some examples of what you can apply for funding for in that category are just on the slide now. Next slide, please, Tika. To apply, there's an Apply Now button which you can find on each of our pages on the Create New South Wales website. It's just on the right-hand side under the Quick Links heading. You can also see the Apply Now button. There's a link on each web page of each grant opportunity. So say that you're applying for individual funding, you can go to that web page and scroll down, and there'll be a hyperlink to Apply Now, and that will take you to Smarty Grants, which is our online grants administration platform. And it's pretty straightforward, and that's where you'll find the application in order to apply. Next slide, please. So in order to be eligible for Create New South Wales funding, what you're applying for must be an arts and cultural activity and fall within that scope. So it's possible for organisations to be located outside of New South Wales, but must engage with New South Wales in some capacity. With individuals applying, you must be located within New South Wales. For Aboriginal applicants, you have to be Aboriginal. For projects, Aboriginal organisations, more details about eligibility for Aboriginal applicants can be found in the guidelines, as well looking at the Creative Courier guidelines as well. So you're not can't apply for funding if you have already started or if you've already completed the activity that you're looking for funding for. And also if your work is screen or film based, not including things like visual arts that's a film-based kind of creative work in that sense, but if it's more aligned with film, it's ineligible for Create New South Wales funding. So it would be best to look at Screen New South Wales and the opportunities that they provide. Next slide, please. So there's two key changes to the 21-22 ACFP. They are the first is that you can submit a video response to merit and impact criteria for projects under $20,000. So that is, I'll talk about merit and impact criteria a bit later. But the other key change is that the round is now open for 6 weeks instead of 4, which is really great to give everyone a bit more time to get things together, which is really great. Next slide, please. So your application will be assessed against 3 criteria, and these are merit, viability, and impact. And I will now go into a little bit more information on what they actually include. Tika, could you please change slides? So merit looks at what your project is, what you're going to be doing, how you're going to be doing it, talking about why it's good. It's really great. Responses have been talking about the narrative of the project and the importance of the practice of the artist, giving details about the practice in itself. So in this section, you will need to include CVs of yourself and those people that you're working with, and include samples of work. So you'll have the opportunity to put these either as a link or upload the files, and think about with uploading samples of work what's best suited to your art form or what kind of practice. So if you're a performance artist presenting a series of photos or uploading a clip of your work, whatever you think will best translate your work to the people who are reading your application. For letters of support, they should come from relevant organisations or industry professionals and partners that you're working with. In the last round, it was noted that successful applications had a strong vision, objectives and rationale for the project or program, and they demonstrated strong partnerships and had really clear examples of work. And how to submit a video response to these kinds of questions will be outlined in an upcoming webinar called How to Submit a Video Response, and that will be tomorrow afternoon from 2 till 3. So if you're interested in how to answer those questions in a really creative or succinct way, I definitely recommend checking that one out. Next slide, please. So when it comes to impact, you'll have 3 choices of which one you'd like to address. These are audience, art form, or operational. Next slide, please. So in the impact section, what you want to have a look at is what impact the program or project will have on one of these selections. So you'll only need to address one. So you can see more details and breakdown of each of the impacts on the slide there. When it comes to addressing impact, it's really important to have kind of clear research and consultation with groups that you're trying to engage with. And it's really important to, or in the past applications have demonstrated that clear evidence for what impact they would have. Next slide, please. So Create New South Wales has key priority areas, which are listed up on the slide. It's not mandatory to engage any of these key priority areas in your project or program, but if you are, this needs to be reflected in your criteria responses, and also needs to demonstrate support from the community or the key priority area that you're engaging with, which can also be evidenced or shown to the assessors in clear support letters. So successful applications had a clear strategy in place for impact, which also included things like marketing and engagement. They identified gaps in the sector that the project or program would address, and they had letters of support from key priority areas that were being engaged. So say that your project was engaging with young people, your application would have a letter from either the school if you're engaging a school, or a youth organisation demonstrating their support and partnership with your project. And again, to work out how to submit a video response to these questions, check out the webinar tomorrow afternoon. Next slide, please. So viability section of the application will go over your ability to deliver the project. So how viable is it? There's a budget template that is available on our website, so please download it and have a bit of a play around with it before filling it in and submitting it in your application. With this one, you only need to fill out the green and yellow cells. And if you have any issues or any questions, please let us know. This is the section that we have the most questions about. And we will be having a webinar dedicated to budgets tomorrow morning that will happen between 11 a.m. and 12. So it'd be great to have a deep dive into that section tomorrow. So this is also looking at the amount of money that you're requesting from Create New South Wales. So really be realistic about how much you need, and your budget here should back up your merit and your impact. When looking at things like fees, artists and arts cultural workers fees, make sure that they're being paid according to industry rates and industry standards. In this section, you'll also be asked to, if your organisation, look at risk, what kinds of things would prevent you from delivering your program, and you'll also here need to include your organisation structure. So for this section, successful applications last round had a clearly articulated budget and breakdown of costs. The arts and arts workers' fees complied with industry rates and they also had a clear and detailed plan for developing and or presenting the work. Change slide, please. So your application, you're able to have the choice as to where your application is assessed. Create New South Wales has 10 art form boards, so 10 different art forms, which assess the application. So with this, think about which one most aligns with your practice, and all of the information is available on our website under the funding and support tab. And if you're not sure which art form board, you can always give us a call and we can always talk it through with you. But whichever one most aligns that you would like to assess your application. If one board receives the application and they think that it's much more suited to another board, they will recommend that your application is then assessed by a different board. Next slide, please. So your application follows this assessment process. First, it goes through an eligibility process, which is done by Create New South Wales. And if it's deemed eligible, it's then allocated to the art form board assessment panel that you have selected. From this, the individual assessors all read through the application. They then all meet together and have a very rigorous discussion about the applications and then recommend the ones for funding to the Minister for the Arts, who then has final approval. Next slide, please. So just a recap about the merit, impact, and viability sections, just to have a little once over of those. Next slide, please. So we have a proposed example of a timeline, keeping in mind that you do have 1 month left now to submit an application to the round 1 ACFP. So think about what you need to get done before then and how to use your time. I know that at the moment it might be a bit difficult to stay motivated, but if you kind of follow up with partners, get the support material, get those kinds of things going, just to kind of get things together ready. Next slide, please. So thank you so much for listening to that brief overview of the 21-22 Arts and Cultural Funding Program. So if you have any inquiries, you can give us a call on that number or that email. There's also a link to other sources of support. There's my details there if you directly want to get in contact with me. I will also be running lab sessions, so that's an opportunity for you to book in a time with one of us in the arts and investment team to have a chat about your project and how to best move forward with your application. So they're really valuable sessions there.